Hey, everybody. I hope that you're having a great day. I want to thank you so much for joining this live broadcast, this Google Hangout. Listen, if you have questions, please let me know by typing them in here. If you're joining us in the group, just type them in as we go, and I'll be happy to answer them afterwards. So also, if you have any trouble hearing me, please let me know, anything like that. But thanks for joining me. I'm happy to talk to you today about the two main ways to make money on a podcast. Now, some of you are at various places in your journey in podcasting. Maybe you haven't even started a podcast. You're just interested in it and you want to know, hey, when I start it, how could I make money at it? And that's perfectly fine. Maybe some of you have been podcasting for a really long time, but you've not been able to monetize it and you want to know how to better do that. And that's what I want to talk about today. Now, so I said there are two main ways to make money in a podcast. And I say that those two ways are direct and indirect. Now, direct would be a way that you actually bring in money, like it sounds, directly from the podcast, okay? So things like that would be sponsorships, where you read an ad or you endorse a product on your show or service. So sponsors or advertisers, and that's what most people think about when they think of making money on a podcast. The next thing is affiliate relationships, and we'll talk a little bit about what those are. A lot of people who, if you've not blogged before, podcast before, don't exactly know what that is. And so we're going to talk about that as well. Next, then after that, crowdsourcing. And some of you are familiar with the concept of crowdsourcing, but don't know exactly what that would mean in a podcast setting. So we're going to talk about that as well. Now, the next main way those were all the direct ways of making money through your podcast. The next way are indirect ways. So those are things that you could sell your audience. So maybe you write a book and you've got this huge audience that you built up over time on your podcast, and they're going to buy your book because they trust you. And so that's a great way to make money as well. Maybe it's an e-course like I'm promoting today. Consulting, maybe it's consulting services where people want to hire you one-on-one for whatever it is that you do. And you can make money that way, and you build up your reputation as someone that people can trust and an authority in your field. And so you do consulting. The next thing is seminars or maybe webinars or things like that. You could actually travel around, go to a city, rent out space and hold seminars, or you could just do webinars and charge money for those. And then the last thing is a physical product. Just maybe a t-shirt for your podcast, a pen, stuff like that. Maybe it's a recorded version of your podcast, something like that. So those would be the indirect ways, if those make sense. So obviously direct, indirect. Now let's dig in more to each of those. The first one that I mentioned was sponsors. Now, sponsoring is going to be, or getting a sponsor is going to be one of the most difficult things that you'll do as a podcaster. There's a general rule of thumb that you'll need to get about 10,000 downloads per episode before you start attracting advertisers. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule. In fact, I've got advertisers before I got 10,000 downloads per episode. The key here is finding something in your niche, and say that you have a really small niche, and that's a good thing. And by the way, that's something I'm talking about in my podcasting e-course, is narrowing down your niche, because it's really important to do so. So the good thing about that is, let's say that you have a podcast about underwater animal husbandry. That's not a thing. I just made it up, but it's really niche, right? It sounds really small. The good thing about that is that there is some company out there that makes a product for underwater animal husbandry. And where do they go to advertise? Well, they can't go to TV, right? It's too large. They'd be wasting too much money. But if you have a podcast to that exact niche, then it would be a no-brainer for them to advertise with you even if you've got a very small audience, right? So that's the thing to think about is advertise to your niche. Okay. Now the next thing we want to talk about is affiliates. So with affiliate relationships, that looks like this. You get a code for Amazon or Bluehost or some company like that. And you put that code in your links on your show notes of your podcast. And when people click that to buy that product, whoever takes that money, they give you a small percentage of whatever is spent because they follow your link. You sold the product for them, and they're going to thank you by saying, here's a small percentage of that sale. Now, Amazon is the most obvious. It's got an affiliate program. It's widely used and it's easy to use. And so, for instance, on my podcast, when I promote a book or something like that, even if I wasn't an Amazon affiliate, I would put a link to that book there so that people who listened to it, who wanted to buy the book, could go buy it. And so now I have the Amazon affiliate link. So they click through, they buy it just the same, and only Amazon tracks it and they say, okay, you got that sale. We're going to give you a percentage of that sale. Now, a few things, always be upfront that your links are affiliate links. Now, Amazon enforces that. They want that to happen. But just as an integrity thing, make sure that people know when they click on your link to buy something that it's an affiliate link if it is. Now, the great thing about affiliate links is that there's no bar to entry. Anyone can do it because they don't pay you unless you make a sale, right? So it's a no-brainer. Now, the downfall of affiliate relationships is that they are generally, they don't pay very much, generally. So for Amazon, generally it's going to be between like 2 and 3% of the sale. So for me, like a book that's not very expensive to begin with, that's just a little bit of money. But of course, over time, it grows, and that's a great thing. Now, there are others who give more, things like Bluehost, which sells websites. They give out big money for their affiliate links when someone clicks on your link and then purchases a website. I would recommend finding something in your niche, some company, again, that sells a product that your audience would be interested in, and start an affiliate relationship with them. And maybe they've never had one before. And so maybe you approach them and say, hey, give me a coupon code where people can get a small discount on their end. And because they use my code, you know that it came from me, and you give me whatever, X%, or maybe it's a flat fee or something like that. So there are a lot of companies that have affiliate programs already set up. If not, go start your own. It's a great system, honestly. Okay, so we've talked about sponsorships. We've talked about affiliate relationships. Now let's talk about crowdsourcing. Now that's an interesting one. So most of you probably know of Kickstarter or GoFundMe or all those kind of websites like that. For a long time, I thought about starting one for my podcast, but honestly, there just wasn't a good platform for podcasters. The problem with Kickstarter and most of these crowdsourcing platforms is that it's all or nothing. So I could say, and it's only one time. So, I mean, you can do it several times, but you've got to do it for a set amount. So basically I could say, I'm going to start a Kickstarter campaign for the next season of Seminary Dropout. And maybe I said, I want to raise $10,000 to fund this next season. Now, if we got $9,999 in pledges, I wouldn't get any of it. And the money would all go back to the people who pledged. So maybe I said, okay, I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to set the bar really low, and I'm going to set it to only $1,000. So then people give over $1,000 and it works out and I get the money. Great. Well, now I've got to wait a whole other season to raise that bar and try to get more money. And so, as you can imagine, it's really tricky to do that. So there was, when I was researching this, I came across another platform that had recently sprung up, and it's gained a lot of traction. It's called Patreon, Patreon.com. And it comes from, the word of being a patron, like a patron of the arts. It's meant for people who are doing ongoing projects, not just one big project. That's perfect for podcasting. I mean, that's what podcasting is. It's an ongoing set of projects. So I set up a Patreon account and I set up the metric to be an episode. And so I can go to my listeners and I can say, hey, how much is one episode worth to you? Will you pledge to give that much per episode? And so basically, when I come out with a new episode, I upload it, I register it with Patreon, and everyone who's pledged to me will then be charged that amount. You get paid monthly. Now, it's not a huge amount that I've raised that way, but it's another stream of revenue that's been really, really helpful. And it's also gotten my people really engaged. So I highly recommend crowdsourcing in that way. And also, people, you can do that very early on before you've built a huge following. And then as you get a bigger following, those people will hopefully sign on. So crowdsourcing is the other way. Now, let's move on to indirect ways of making money with your podcast. So the first one I mentioned was a book. You're doing a podcast because you have some kind of expertise at something. Maybe you don't think that's true, but it really is. If you want to do a podcast about bad movies, well, write a book about bad movies. And you say, well, I don't know about how to get published or if it's going to be good enough to get published. Do an ebook. Anyone can do that, or just self-publish. It's super easy to get a word out there these days with an ebook or a regular book. And, once it's there, especially with an ebook, because there's little upfront cost to you, you can always have that on your site to sell. You can plug it in every episode of your podcast. You can end your podcast or begin your podcast with saying, hey, remember, I've got this book. If you like what you hear here, go purchase that book. It's a great way to fund your podcast, to make money with your podcast. The next one is an e-course. This is great if you've got something that you podcast about that is somewhat technical. I mean, what if you did a podcast about resurfacing furniture? Well, people who are going to listen to that, they're going to trust you, and they might be hungry for a how-to on how to resurface furniture. And so what if you did an e-course and you could do videos and pictures and step-by-step, you could teach these people how to do something. This can work for a lot of different things. So e-courses can be very, very beneficial and be very, very profitable as well, all from the authority that you've garnered through your podcast. The next one is consulting. So, maybe your podcast is about public speaking. So you do podcasts about public speaking and people begin to know this girl, this guy knows what they're talking about when it comes to public speaking. And I need to get better at public speaking. I wonder if I could pay them to talk with me, to listen to me speak, to critique it. Or can I bring them into my office and have them talk to my people about how to give better presentations, how to speak better in public? Consulting can be a great way to do this. You'll notice that some of these ways are, they apply more for different kinds of podcasts than others. So maybe if consulting doesn't lend itself to what your podcast is about, maybe an e-course will, or maybe a book will. The next thing is a seminar or a webinar. This is great for informational type stuff. Maybe if your podcast is about marketing, well, a webinar is a fantastic way to teach people how to do that. And there are also plenty of platforms out there to do webinars. And obviously, seminars are also on the table too. The only holdback there is that you've obviously got to be live. There are a lot more preparations involved and sometimes a lot more money as well. But there's still viable ways to make money. And the last one, of course, is the physical product. This is so easy because anyone can do it no matter what your podcast is about. Your people probably want a t-shirt to wear to show the world this podcast that they listen to, how great they think it is. This could be anything. I mean, promotional materials are endless. T-shirts, hats, socks, pens, pencils, koozies, anything, iPhone covers. It's endless. Now, I will say, make sure if you have a product that it's quality, because you don't want to compromise the trust that your audience has in you because you sold them a t-shirt that fell apart in a week and they said, I trusted that person, but they just wanted to make a buck. So that's the last thing that I will leave you with, is that trust is a big deal. Trust is something that you can't waste. And honestly, I think, going back to the ads and the sponsorships, I think that podcast is positioned uniquely to do better ads, better sponsorships than any other medium, because people come and they listen to it. And listen, if you get a sponsorship, please do not just read off some copy that someone else wrote for you. You tell them why you like that product, because your audience trusts you, and that is powerful. And that's powerful. And on the same token, make sure that you believe in the products that you're sponsoring, or that are sponsoring you, rather. Okay. Now, I want to leave you with one last thing, and that is that everything that I've talked about here is just a fraction of my e-course. You can find this e-course at podcastingforeveryone.com. Go there and you can get a free lesson, which is actually the one we just went over. So if you want notes for this, go to Podcasting for You. That's FORYOU, podcastingforyou.com, and check out the free lesson that's part of the course. And it's basically the notes for what we've just gone over. Now, there's tons of other stuff there in the e-course. In fact, let me just go over a little bit about what's going to be on that course. There's going to be one on content. How do you produce a fantastic content? There's one on the equipment and the tools that you're going to need. And there are several ways to set that up. I walked through all of it for you. I walked through the cost of it, and just everything that you could possibly need. There's a section on using your mixer. So some of you will choose to have a mixer, and this is how you use it. I walk through all of it. Okay. Next, getting your podcast online and on iTunes. Most people know that iTunes is the biggest directory for podcasts. So how do you get it there? I walk through all of that. Next lesson is about editing your podcast in the workflow. So basically, if you mess up in a podcast, how do you edit that out? I walk through all of that for you. The next lesson is on promotion. Now that you've created this, how do you let the world know that it's there for you? And how do you draw people in so that they listen? The next lesson is about monetizing the podcast, which is what we just briefly went over. And then the last one, there's a conclusion, and then there's a special bonus at the end that I think that you'll really, really find valuable. So be sure to go there, podcastingforyou.com, and please sign up. And in fact, I've got a special code for you, but it only lasts for 30 minutes from now. Okay. So, and actually a little bit more than 30 minutes, but at 8 o'clock, this code will expire, and you can get 33% off the course if you buy it before 8 o'clock. Okay. So the code to get 33% off is the number 33. Who would have thought? So you can do that. Get that much money off, and it's a great savings. This is a fantastic value either way. So that's it. Thank you so much for joining me on for this Google Hangout. And keep in touch. A few more notes about the course. When you join, you will be a part of a Facebook group. So you'll have access to me, access to other people taking the course. I don't just say good luck. No, I'll be with you throughout the ordeal. There's worksheets, there's videos, all kinds of stuff in this, graphics in this course. You will truly, truly benefit from it. I really believe in it. Okay. Thank you again for joining, and I hope to see you online.